Hello and welcome everyone to the Sports Business Network Speaker Series. And we have a great guest joining the show today with us. We have Quint Kessenich, who is from ABC Sports and ESPN. Quint was a lacrosse goalie at Johns Hopkins University, where he was not only an All-American, but twice he was named the goalkeeper of the year when he was at Johns Hopkins. He's a sportscaster. He does everything from lacrosse, basketball, football, hockey, wrestling, and horse racing. Quint was a three-sport athlete in high school where he played soccer, he wrestled, and he played lacrosse. So welcome to the show, Quint Kessenich.
Great to be here. Thanks. Quite an introduction. I got to have my sister update my Wikipedia page.
Yeah, you need to have that. So it's a great thing to have you on. So welcome once again. So what we do with Sports Business Network is it's a network for athletes, helping current athletes and student athletes to be the best they can be in everything that they do, from jobs to networking to making connections, having mentors, etc. We want to get to know what your path was on how you got into your career at ESPN. When you were, at Johns Hopkins as a goalie, playing at the highest level, competing for national championships, when did you make the decision, or did you make the decision in college that this is something that you really wanted to do?
I did make it in college. I mean, my origins in broadcasting go back to when I was a kid. My dad was a high school football coach and a wrestling coach and a baseball coach, and we'd watch a lot of sports together and commentate. And I, spent a lot of time watching high school football film. But in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to stay involved with sports, but I wasn't sure about coaching. Just a random person said, "Hey, they're interested in talking to you about doing Johns Hopkins lacrosse games next spring after I graduated on radio." And so, I got a job at Citibank working for their credit card. They had a Choice Visa card company based in Towson, Maryland, and I was in the HR department interviewing people. It was an internship I had during college, and then they offered me a job there. And I also started coaching at Boys Latin School, which was on the way home. But the broadcasting was very part-time. It was, Johns Hopkins lacrosse games on radio, 10 games. The season in 1991, we did the national title game as well from the Dome that year. And then I repeated that back in 92. And it was somewhere along that line, I was pretty miserable in my 9 to 5. I was starting to get really good feedback from people who heard the radio, said I sounded different, said the game's never been covered like this before. The game, that was back when lacrosse was still very much in the dark ages in terms of television and radio. I don't think there had been a recent athlete who was doing commentary. And so I think the listeners enjoyed that. And that encouraged me to kind of continue with it and try to broaden that.
So what was the next step? You go from radio. How did you get into TV?
I left Citibank after like a year and ended up working for a corporate video production company in Timonium, Maryland, where I was producing videos for big corporations, DeWalt, Becton Dickinson, Black & Decker, the Baltimore Sun. So that was interesting. I was writing and I was in the production field. Most of them were sales video type things. At the same time, the radio segued to some local TV on home team sports, 1993, 94, 95. But again, it was very part-time. It was only 5 or 6 games a year. And those games then got me to an audition to do some play-by-play, believe it or not, for the old MILL, which was the old Indoor Lacrosse League. They had a doubleheader scheduled, and Leif Elsmo was covering the game in Charlotte. They needed somebody to voice over, to go call the game up in the Boston Garden. So I auditioned for that in Philadelphia with an ESPN producer by the name of Bill Fitz. It was me and Steve Mason. I won the audition, and then a week later, I'm flying up to Boston to call an indoor lacrosse game, play-by-play, with no experience in that role. I think it was 94 or 95. They liked it so much that they said, "Hey, why don't you stay with us the rest of the season, and you can call the games from the bench. Leif will be up top, and we'll just bring you in, and you'll be on the bench. You'll interview coaches and players." And so that led to a steady gig for those next 2 winters, all while, again, still it was very much part-time. That then, I was honestly, Dave, I was honestly part-time for 12 years out of college, struggling, and always had the dream of, man, I would love to be a broadcaster full-time, and just gradually gaining momentum and gaining properties. So the indoor lacrosse then led to the NCAA championships. So I covered that in 95, was my first year for ESPN as an independent contractor. And then 7 years after that, I got my first contract in 2002. But so it took me 12 years at a time. It was really rough at a time where my friends were getting married, they were buying houses. I was living in a small apartment, kind of, struggling, happy. I had a goal, I had a dream, didn't know if I'd be able to pull it off. It was kind of hanging by a thread there for a little bit in the late 90s, and everything worked out for the best.
It's interesting, when you say you started out with Citibank in the HR area, we work with a lot of HR directors and getting them to put jobs and internship opportunities onto sports business networks. And one of the things that HR directors love about athletes is that athletes bring so many different qualities that they learned on the field, in the locker room. And what do you think are some of the qualities that you learned in not only in high school, but at Johns Hopkins, competing at the highest level? What were some of the qualities that you basically learned that you brought into your career?
Well, I mean, it's who I am. Broadcasting is what I do, but who I am is really determined by a lot of those athletic experiences, whether it be, I was a big high school wrestler. Wrestling was my first passion. I'd always thought I was going to be a college wrestler. And so when you start training hard, when you're in 7th grade, all the way to your senior year, you learn discipline, the event structure, time management, the sacrifice that it takes to make weight, the team aspect of it. And then as I kind of segued into lacrosse, the ability to how to practice and how to get the most out of your teammates and how to come together as a team. And then in college, where the stakes are a little higher, I think what I learned was to be aggressive and to focus on the process, focus on my training, trust my teammates, rely on my teammates, and then on game day, let it rip and have no second doubt, don't have second thoughts or doubts if you've put yourself in a position to succeed. So even now in what I do, I still go back to, it still feels like my high school schedule. I have a fall, a winter, and a spring, and I'm very, I'm pretty regimented in terms of the way, I prepare for games. I have my process, and then I go into a game saying to myself, you know what, whether I get to talk a lot here, whether I have a good game or not, at least I put myself in position like an athlete. I put myself in position to play well on game day.
I love it. It's funny, for those listeners, Quint and I go way back. We had some mutual friends. The first time I ever saw Quint wrestle was in a nighttime spotlight match, Island Trees versus Lynbrook at Island Trees at night. I think it was a Friday night. My girlfriend went to Island Trees, who's now my wife, and I got to see you wrestle at Island Trees all the way back then.
Yeah, no, I had a rival at Island Trees, Joe Machia, who's we think we ended up wrestling 3 times. I won the first time, he won the second time, then I beat him the third time, I think that night. But you think I remember a whole off season of summer weightlifting, like every day I'd go lift with that guy on my mind. Every single day of the summer I train for that, for knowing that there was a rival out there that I just lost to. And so however healthy or unhealthy that was at the time, it motivated me to get the best out of my abilities.
Well, it's interesting, you take something from, there's a great book that someone gave me. It says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, not sometimes you lose. And taking that defeat, and that's one of the things I think that also it's another quality that athletes bring to the table, is how to overcome defeat and then learn from it and then train from it. We had Kylie Ohlmiller from back in the, Kylie Ohlmiller, for the fans who don't know, is probably one of the best women's lacrosse players in the world. And I asked her what was one of the things that she differentiates herself in. And she said, I lost 2 games by 1 goal. And those games motivated me more than anything. So every time she does a workout, she does 2 more reps. And the 2 more reps represent the tying goal and the winning goal. And that's what she would do, 2 more reps just to get those in, to make herself be the champion that she is today.
Yeah, no, and I think that exists in the real world too, in terms of always moving ahead, always trying to learn. I view every game now, every show as an opportunity. It's like my game. I train for a week, I prepare for a week for one or two games that week, and I try not to grade myself. I try not to judge and keep score, so to speak. But I do know when I have a good show and I have a bad show. And then, as you said, there's lessons to be learned every week, whether it's in a subtle conversation you have with coach, whether it's a scenario that you see on the field and how you handle it, whether it's bumping into an old friend. 2 weeks ago, I bumped into John Gordon, the motivational speaker and author.
You're a Cornell lacrosse player.
Former Cornell lacrosse player, completely random, outside the hotel at Clemson. I just finished up my workout. I was going to go for a jog. He was outside. We ended up walking for 45 minutes and having the most amazing discussion. Clemson was in a situation where they're having not such a great season, and he's speaking to the team. And we were talking about how do you take something that's not so great and make it special. And there's all sorts of analogies. It's like a sentence, like your season's not over, so there's not a period at the end of the sentence. It's still a comma. You write your future. I talked about balsamic vinegar in Bologna, Italy. If you watch the Stanley Tucci show, the same vines that make bad wine, they figured out in the 1500s could make world-class black gold, which is balsamic vinegar. And so they took something that wasn't so great and turned it into something super special. So there are so many lessons that I bump into, and that's really the fun part of my job.
Yeah, well, if you can get John Gordon, we reached out to John. We want to get John on the show. I actually coached John's niece in lacrosse. She went on to be a great lacrosse player. She did 4 years at Northwestern. She's doing her 5th year at UVA this year for grad school, and that's Megan Gordon. So Megan, good luck with the Cavs this year. But I love John's books. Sitting right behind me on my shelf is one of his books, and I love it. The Hard Hat. All his books, the
coffee bean. He made a great point too about Cornell lacrosse and George Boyardi, a former player who passed away there years ago. And he said that was a transformational moment in the program's history, because instead of worrying about wins and losses, they're just playing to the standard of George Boyardi and what he stood for. And that's kind of a freeing as an athlete when you're not focused on the scoreboard, but you're focused either on the process or how hard you play.
Yeah. Well, you focus on the process a lot, and that's, it's interesting. I don't think a lot of people understand what the process is and how much goes into a reporter's work, the pre-work and everything. Let's take the listeners through what a typical week is like. So, last week you and I were talking yesterday about the game that you just did, how you have to fly out to Washington. This week you're doing Florida State versus Miami. What's a typical week look like for you?
Well, Sunday mornings travel, Sunday afternoon, we'll find out our game. So we're on a 6-day schedule. Monday for me, we have a production meeting Monday afternoon at 5:00 where the entire crew will talk about different story ideas. So Monday is kind of a general look at both teams, a sense of place. Where are we going? What's at stake here? Is this a rivalry game? Is there anything special? Who are our stars? How can we surround this game with interesting elements? So we talk about that on Mondays. So Monday and Tuesday are my film days. This morning I was watching film downstairs for about an hour and a half of Miami. I've covered Florida State twice, so I'll watch their last game in its entirety. I had them at Clemson, but I build a book basically. I have actually. This is my folder from Florida State Clemson from 2 weeks ago. It's four folders. So these are coaches notes, player notes, whether it's talking to the players or doing research. I'm the king of Google. 2 deeps, charts of who's going to play. You got rosters. I got a lot of extra things like, nearest hospital, the refs' names, certain phone numbers. I got headshots of the coaches who I'll talk to either at practice or pregame. It really helps if you can know someone's name when you go up to them and say, "Hey, Coach Kotowski, how you doing?" Yeah, like all of a sudden that you get a little more respect. So that's my process for the reporter role. Quite honestly, you may talk 8 times a game, so 80 or 90% of my work goes unused, but I'm always ready. We had a situation a couple of weeks ago where the power went out at Kansas for the Kansas-Oklahoma game. And I felt I was really prepared for that. I knew the refs' names. I helped the broadcast crew with the clock. We had a situation last week where, we were watching warmups and there were some player availability issues and just hustling. There's a huge value in hustling. I think about lacrosse and my head coach, Larry Glenn's at Limbrook. Hustling was part of who we became. He had to coach us initially how to hustle. And then eventually when you start hustling, like those plays are who you are. That's not a hustle play. It's just, you're going to beat the guy to the end line. You're going to win that ground ball scrap. You're going to be the first guy into the face-off X. You're going to beat your wing play. The hustle plays become who you are. And I think in the real world, it's always good to think like a hustler. You just do the extra work.
Well, it seems like you've been hustling your entire career from the standpoint of starting out doing stuff part-time and getting as much work as possible to now we see you, pretty much every weekend, on TV doing, all of the college football games right now, all over the place. But then, you're also doing the NCAA wrestling matches. So how did you get into NCAA wrestling?
Well, my boss and producer at ESPN, John Vassallo, who's been, a tremendous mentor of mine and a friend. He got let go about a year and a half ago from ESPN, but for 18 or 15 years, he was my main guy. And it's all been very gradual. It was, I think back in 2004 or 5, they had a Big Ten football game. They needed a reporter and he sent me, and it was a one-shot deal. And quite honestly, if I sucked, I wouldn't have gotten the call the next week. And so I try to treat every week that way. For the rest of my career, I do. I don't pencil in calling a national championship game on ESPN for lacrosse, even though I've done it, for a couple of years in a row now. I don't pencil anything. I'll show you my schedule. I don't even have a game, penciled in for November 20th. So I take everything as a one-shot deal. Like, I'm going to give this game my all. It's very cliched, but it's a 1-0 attitude this week. And I think in the real world, that's project-based, that you can use that, seasonally. I'm a big believer in short-term goals. When I was a lacrosse player, I rarely looked past Saturday, and I did really focus on each day of the week. And then when that Saturday game went final, I just reset the calendar. But for me, the first football game I remember very well. I was interviewing Randy Walker, who's the coach at Northwestern. He was Northwestern at Penn State, and right before I had to interview him at halftime, Coach Walker, who passed away a couple of years after that, but he put his arm around me and said, "Quint, don't worry, I got you. Everything will be okay." and right at that moment, I must have been like shaking. But at that moment, I realized, like, wow, that's why this guy's a really good coach. Because in that moment of stress for me, not for him, he made me feel so comfortable. And the interview went off well. They called me back the next week. I had Penn State again. And at a time where Joe Paterno wasn't the most easy interview, I had a post-game interview with him at Indiana, and I got him to answer 3 questions really well. It was pouring rain, and he had this raincoat on. And my producer was like, "Wow, that was great. How'd you get him to talk?" I'm like, "Well, he's not that big of a man, if you ever met him." And I grabbed the back of his raincoat.
Brown University alumnus, by the way.
That's right, Brooklyn, New York. And I grabbed the back of his raincoat, almost like I was in a wrestling tie-up with him, and I wouldn't let him go. And he was not going to go until I got 3 good answers out of him. And so the producer then called me back. And so, I earned their trust about 15 years ago to do football. Same thing with wrestling. When they heard I had a wrestling background, they gave me a shot. I've been doing that for a while. Same thing with horse racing. I had gone up to Saratoga and written for a newspaper up there during the summers early in my career. And I had got an opportunity to cover the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont. And it's all been, brick on top of brick on top of brick. You got an opportunity, run with it. Every opportunity is a good opportunity. I tell people that, whether it's business or the broadcasting industry, the more things you can do, the more tentacles you put out there, the more opportunities.
Well, it seems to me like, there's a great quote, that life will give you opportunities, but you need to be ready when those opportunities present themselves. And it seems like through your tireless preparation, you are ready when those opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, I tell that to broadcasting students all the time. stay with it, get involved in things where, yeah, I'm not really a baseball guy, but I can call these games online for this minor league baseball team, or my college. I'm calling some of my college games, lacrosse games, and I'm really not a lacrosse guy. I'm like, no, you got to do it. All reps are good reps. And then opportunity leads to opportunity. So you're not going to get a call by sitting in your office hoping the phone rings. So you got to put yourself out there. And many times it's in a lesser role. It's in a role you're not comfortable with. It's in a role you don't think you're suited for. But you got to start somewhere. I mean, so many people that I know at ESPN who are upper to middle management now, who are producing in trucks, who are starring in their roles, had really humble beginnings. I mean, they were production assistants. They were carrying cables, and they proved themselves in that role, and they've worked themselves up the ranks into really good positions, and they've been tremendous leaders and employees because of their scope of knowledge, because they have been in so many of those different spots. They know what it's like for that rookie to come in and try to perform.
So how does the rookie get started? Are they a journalism major? Does it matter? Someone who's out there, a current student athlete playing a college sport right now, and they think, you know what, I never really thought of broadcasting. How do I get started?
Well, I mean, it goes back to high school or college right now. Any opportunity, again, the TV industry is not in a great place right now. It's really evolving rapidly, and we'll see where this goes. But any reps are good reps. So if someone calls you and say, hey, you want to do a couple high school games online? Chaminade is playing St. Anthony's, and we're going to put it on a webinar. You played lacrosse at St. John's. We'd love to have you do it. Or how can I help? Can I call up Hofstra University and say, do you need someone to broadcast your lacrosse games? Do you need somebody to get on the student radio station for an hour and talk about sports? I don't want to say you have to be pushy, but you got to be looking for opportunities, and you've got to be creative. And again, you've got to want to be involved. The money at that stage, the money in the early parts of this industry is you can't live on it. So again, that's why I started as part-time, and it was a real scrape for me for a dozen years. But again, I kept on getting opportunities. Lee Felsmo called me back in the early 90s. Hey, do you want to work on my weekly show? And so I'd go and cut packages and voice packages. Again, any opportunity is a good opportunity. You meet people on those shows. So if you're covering minor league baseball, the producer may be the same guy who handles the hockey team during the winter in town, or that the camera guys know that there's some gigs over at the state fair, when there's a state championship softball tournament. So, you got to get in the game to get gigs.
Well, let me ask you this. You've done so many different things in so many different sports. This might be a tough question for you to answer, but what's been maybe one or two of your favorite sporting events so far that you've done and that you've been a part of?
Well, I mean, the Lacrosse National Championship is always a special day for me. Memorial Day, they unfurl the flag, they play the anthem, and the two best teams in the country go at it. So that day is, I get emotional on that day. A big time college football game. I covered Michigan, Ohio State 3 times. That's an amazing event. A huge college football game with national implications is a great event. To cover Kentucky Derby, to walk into Churchill Downs and look up and you see that grandstand and you see the twin spires and you see the colors of the dresses and the sounds and the smells of the cigar and the smells of the horses, like that was sensory overload for me. That was incredible. And then any of my NCAA championships, I do hockey now. The wrestling has always been special for me. I mean, I know how good those wrestlers are, how they've trained for a lifetime to be in that spot, and what that match win means for them. I mean, that is a lifetime dream goal scenario for them. I know it, and I have a lot of respect for covering that event, and I really look forward to it, because there's nothing.
We love the wrestling community, and I don't even know if you even know this, but when I started at Brown, I played 3 sports. I played football, I wrestled, then I played lacrosse. And wrestling is part of the Sports Business Network. Our main sponsor is Spartan Races, and Joe DeSena, who's the CEO, he's got 2 kids that wrestle. Joe went to Cornell. He has donated over $1 million to to the Cornell wrestling program and the facility that they put in at Cornell. So wrestling hopefully will be a big part of what we're doing here at Sports Business Networks.
Yeah, wrestlers are great employees. These are young people. They're unbreakable. Their work ethic is second to none. Their focus and their toughness and their ability to accomplish a task is I'm just amazed.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. I love it. It's great having you on. It's great to see you. I'm going to end up with the last question that we always ask. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten and who gave it to you?
I mean, my life has been about coaches and being on teams. And now even in my professional life, I'm on a team right now during the football season. I'll be on a different team, obviously during lacrosse and for all my shows. But early TV career, there was a director by the name of Bob Frattarola who is strong in the industry, does a lot of the MLS soccer right now. He lives in Boston. He's a runner. I think he's a former athlete. At a time where social media, phones, distractions, the internet were starting to take over our lives, and I think they take over a lot of people's lives. He said to me at a production meeting one time before the meeting started, he goes, "Be here now." I think I asked him. I said, "Are you on the flight at 8:00 tonight after the game?" He looked at me, he goes, "Be here now." I go, "Be here now." Yeah. And like when you understand that in this day and age of multitasking, in this day and age of distractions, be here now. My ability to focus on this football game this week, to be a good husband, to be a good father for my daughter, like that's really all I can worry about. The lacrosse stuff I'll put off to the side for now. I think so many people are overrun by distractions and by trivial things that are taking them away from the task at hand. So be here now in this day and age of dopamine, sensitivity and people being, overrun by distractions. I think is so critical for young people. You have a lot of options, but be where your feet are. If you're at practice, be where your feet are.
I just listened to a great podcast with Joe Rogan. He had Dr. Amishi Jha on. She's a psychiatrist at the University of Miami, and she just came out with a book called Peak Mind. Find your focus, own your attention. And it's all about mindfulness and having that mindfulness to be present in that situation. So I love that quote right there, be here now.
Yeah. If you're talking to somebody, that's your focus. You're not looking at your phone. If you're in a team meeting, your focus is on the coach and what's being discussed. If you're working for a company and you're on a conference call, well, you shouldn't be dabbling in crossword puzzles on the side. I just think that people are being torn in a lot of different directions right now, and it's impacting one-on-one relationships. It's impacting productivity, and it's a tough era to grow up in. We were lucky. We were lucky back in the late 70s and the 80s.
No social media.
No, we hardly had cable TV. I got the cable TV as like a sophomore in high school. That was never. We had 4 channels. It's like the worst thing you could do. Nowadays, the kids are overrun with reasons not to be here now.
Well, listen, Quint, this has been fantastic. I thank you, and the listeners, I'm sure, thank you as well. Listen, you can watch Quint. He's going to be all over the place. He's going to be on football. He's going to be doing hockey, wrestling, and obviously the NCAA lacrosse championships. Although he says he hasn't penciled it in, I'm telling you, pencil it in. You'll see Quint there on Memorial Day weekend. So, Quint, thanks so much for being on the show.
Go Limbrook, go Hopkins, and hope everyone tunes in our show this weekend.
Sounds great, Quint. Thanks so much, bud.
Thank you.